My exploration of video games was entirely self-propelled. Neither of my parents had ever played them, and so, in my youth, I was left to discover the medium through flash game websites and YouTube top 10 lists. One evening, I was scrounging around our apartment's computer room, which was practically my domicile. In a basket, buried underneath my mom's CDs, was a jewel case that stood out. Is this a video game? What is it doing here? How Myst ended up in our possession is an enigma to my parents as well, neither of whom remembered it. Perhaps they bought it, or it got mixed into a stack of CDs, or it was a gift, but none of us know. 1 hour before dinner, I slid the disc into my humble eMachine's desktop. It ran almost without issue on Windows XP, though it took a moment to realize that the picture was upside down, which forced me to turn my monitor the same way. Much like the main character in the game's intro, I had fallen into the Island of Myst with nothing to my name or knowledge. I clicked around the world, filled with imagery so striking and vivid, but disjointed and without explanation. Everything was so purposely built, but that purpose was unfathomable to me. My whole session was dogged by a persistent feeling. It was creepy. It was lonely, but personal. Whoever was here is gone now, but their work remains. It's like meeting a ghost. The library, the observatory, the cabin, the privilege of stepping into Ozymandias's temple. Here today, gone tomorrow. When my mother called me for dinner, I closed the game with a jumble of relief and disappointment. Still afraid of the dark, the game's isolation was nerve-wracking, but at the same time, I was entranced by it. I never booted it up again, for reasons I can't quite justify. It just lingered in my mind for years, and it would be years until I learned I'd brushed one of the great gaming masterpieces, the highest-selling PC game for a straight decade, and one of the most influential titles ever released. So, much like that sensitive child afraid of the dark, I think it's time to peek back inside Myst. Oh, would you look at that? A Patreon. By the way, I'm going to spoil the game's plot and likely several of the puzzles. If that bothers you, you can pick it up in its original form for $5 or one of its many updated versions. Double spoiler, I'm going to recommend it, so you should absolutely try the game out. Anyway, the moment you open the case, Myst promises you something unique. You have stumbled upon a most intriguing book, a book titled Myst. You have no idea where it came from, who wrote it, or how old it is. As you reach the last page, you fall through it into another world where you appear on a dock. The most striking part of Myst is its look. Remember that in 1993, the cutting edge of immersive worlds were Doom and Ultima Underworld, which were rendered in a pseudo-3D that allowed the player to explore every corner of them. Myst takes an opposite approach. Its world was first created as a fully 3D environment, then captured in pre-rendered images which the player can click through to simulate movement. This means that, while your view is locked to the angles chosen by the developers, the imagery itself was richly detailed for its time, with advanced lighting and textures. Remember that this is 2 years before Toy Story, the first fully CGI film. These visuals were groundbreaking. Many will say that Myst's graphics have aged poorly, sometimes jokingly referring to it as a screensaver collection. I agree that, as a photoreal style, they haven't held up in the slightest, and the game's many remasters and remakes over the years do a much better job capturing the vision in the creators' minds. That's through the lens of the past, however. Playing Myst for the first time today, and taking it for what it is, I find the art incredibly affecting, for the same reasons others will call it aged. I touched on this in my video on Harvester, but games like this, which used pre-rendered CG circa the 90s, have a really distinct feel to them. At the time, they were realistic, but now many of them fall into the uncanny valley, something close to real life, but just shoddy enough that you can tell the difference. In Harvester, I found it enhanced the feeling of unease that was so core to Gilbert Austin's intent. In Myst, it creates a sense of alienation. Having played the original, I actually prefer this to the remake's fully navigable world with dynamic shadows and particle effects. Myst is a game about going to another world, and I feel like I'm in another world. As you explore the various areas on the island, you find rooms and devices with no clear purpose, but things seem interconnected. There's a sunken ship at the dock and an identical model submerged further inland, surrounded by panels with various symbols. There's a rocket ship with a closed hatch and power lines that lead to a generator room deep underground. Power to spaceship. The game's imagery was inspired by Cyan's base of operations, Spokane, Washington, a town where brutal industrial steel meets untamed nature, with homage to the native tribes littered throughout. These clashing elements evoke passing time, history, and purpose, the right fit for a world such as Myst. 2 Palladian-style buildings greet you up the hill, and a note left on the ground. It's addressed to someone named Catherine from Atlas, and it says to enter the number of marker switches into the imager to find a message. Right next to the dock is a door leading down to a hologram device. On the wall, a panel with a piece of paper detailing different codes for different things. Now, I know I was just praising the game's visuals, but they do a disservice to the readability sometimes. What you should see is this button in the corner which opens the panel, but it's really dark and difficult to make out. This is not the first time this happens, and it's one of my minor gripes with the game. By counting up the marker switches and putting that number into the panel, you get a message from the aforementioned Atlas. He tells you that something has gone horribly wrong, and his sons, Cirrus and Akinar, could be to blame, but he doesn't know which one. It's all very vague, as the message is pre-recorded, and you are definitely not the person he left it for. This brings up lots of questions, such as who he is, who Catherine is, and what's happened with his sons. Only some of these questions are answered by the books in the library. Most of them are burnt and destroyed, but a few are intact and actually full of written story. These are Atlas's journals, in which he details his journeys through various worlds, which he calls ages. Reading through these was delightful. Myst is a very self-paced game. There are lots of objectives, but you're often free to do them in the order you choose, and in fact, if you already know the solutions to the mandatory puzzles, you can beat the game in less than a minute. This means that, as I explored the island, I stumbled across these writings naturally, and it wasn't a torpedo to the game's flow. Instead, I found myself entranced by the suggestions of a world found within. One of the primary influences on the game's narrative were brothers Rand and Robin Miller's love of Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. In particular, the way that both authors littered their plots with hints and references to a greater history and setting while keeping things focused on a particular chapter or slice of it. If you're a fan of the lore in Dark Souls, this is the exact inspiration Miyazaki took from Lord of the Rings when implementing a narrative. Digging into their previous titles reveals a creative through line. The Manhole and Cosmo Osmo are more like interactive worlds, playgrounds for children to explore and find amusing, unexpected things. With no real goals, they push the boundary of what you could call a game. If you dig back through developer interviews and writings from the 80s and 90s, you'll certainly find a lot of talk about games, but one term that's fallen to the wayside is simply software, or software art. This is a much freer perspective, and perhaps as the medium became more commercialized, so too was this free-spirited term supplanted by video game. Atris's journals are packed full of detail. I spent a good 40 minutes poring through them, and I'm a pretty fast reader. Yet they're written mostly for his own record, so he doesn't bother launching into an explanation of what these different ages are, how he found them, or maybe created them. How did people in these ages come to be? Are these places out in space, or whole other dimensions? If they're called ages, are they just the same world in different time periods? Myst doesn't feel the need to go into lengthy exposition, because this is a story about two brothers and their father. The rest of it is just the trappings. At the same time, I find the lore incredibly compelling. It's wholly unlike anything I've read before, sans Narnia. I love the idea of something called the art that creates literal worlds out of books that the creator can travel inside and be surprised by what he finds. He never comes across as a god of his own making, just an explorer who sees opportunities for rich and wonderful experiences, who finds joy in creation. These diaries also contain important clues about future challenges, and you would be remiss not to take note of them. In fact, Myst is the first game I've ever played where I decided to take real, physical notes on pen and paper, and, in simple terms, it was really cool. Here you'll also find two books, one red and one blue. Inside are charming little 90s FMV messages from Cirrus and Akinar. They're speaking to you through tons of distortion, but you can just barely make out the words red and blue pages from them, respectively. The library is the centerpiece of the island. As the House of Knowledge, not only does it hold Atris's journals, it also hides a secret passage to the observation tower, which can be rotated to face 4 of the island's points of interest. Doing so reveals different clues you can infer correspond to them. Turning to the rocket ship gives us a voltage, the sunken ship a series of dates, and so on. If you've been exploring the rest of the island, you might connect these clues to other locations. The giant gear gives us a time and a series of numbers. If you make your way to the clock tower on the water, you'll find 2 knobs which can be turned to move the hands. Set it to the correct time, and a path is opened up. Inside, a mechanism of gears and pull strings. One turns the top 2, the other the bottom 2, and you need to align them in a certain order. What you might not figure out for a bit is that holding one of the chains down keeps the center gear spinning. Once that's done, the cog at the base of the mechanism opens up and, wait. They were connected the whole time. What inspired me to make this video was a stream I was on with my friend Prox, where he was playing the oft-forgotten PS2 port. We chipped away at the island for an hour before solving this puzzle, and we were both certain that the rest of them would take just as long to decipher, so we finally get to the gear, only to discover this book inside, and when he clicks on the image in the book...
What just happened?
What?
What? Whoa. Oh my god. We just fucking teleported?
There's another island?
Oh my god. I feel like you could spend like a whole day playing this game. Jesus Christ.
In a 2018 GDC talk, Yoko Taro made the claim that a sense of freedom doesn't come from giving the player 100 options. It comes from showing them 5 and letting them discover 6 and 7. Setting up your expectations for the world and then subverting them makes you feel like anything could happen. In his words, freedom is in a future that you did not have in the past. This moment in Myst is mind-boggling. Many people, myself included, will stumble around trying their hardest to piece together what's going on, trying to solve one puzzle, and just when you've had that aha moment, you go to collect your spoils, only to discover that the world is much bigger than you could ever imagine. In fact, the Island of Myst is only a hub world, and each of the 4 major landmarks are puzzles you must solve before accessing the other ages. These ages can be completed in whatever order you'd like, and don't worry, they are not nearly as dense as Myst. Most of them consist of 2 puzzles, and contain both a red and blue page for you to return to the brothers. The first age I chose to visit is called Channelwood. It's a waterlogged world with massive trees that grow straight from the swamps. A dense fog obscures the horizon, and technology is powered by water and wind power. Atris describes it as being inhabited by a race of monkey-like people who take a fascination with him. In their village, he meets another human, impossibly old and frail, who speaks English, but he can barely make out his whispers. Later, Atris brings his sons here and leaves them to grow up for a bit, confident that this is a peaceful and serene age whose inhabitants they can learn from. Now, Channelwood is a ghost town. After solving a puzzle to power the elevator, you ascend to the village in the trees, but no one's here. Huts and houses are in disarray, furniture turned over and long deserted. The wind whips at your ears and the floorboards creak. There's a haunting emptiness to Channelwood. On the higher level, you find the rooms of both Cirrus and Akinar. Cirrus sleeps in a lush cabin, furnished with rugs and ornate furniture, bottles of what I assume to be alcohol strewn around. Some chairs are knocked over in his room, suggesting a struggle. Akinar's room, by contrast, is a Spartan shack with little more than a bed frame. A device plays back recordings of him that come off as disturbed. This room chilled me to the marrow when I first entered. It has no real significance. There's no puzzle here, just a piece of the world to ponder. That feeling is owed in no small part to the game's excellent score by Robin Miller. Initially, the brothers thought that a soundtrack would be too distracting, but Robin managed to put together music that evoked a thick atmosphere and blended with the ambient noises throughout the game. It's not always playing, but when it does, you hardly notice it. It folds right into the thoughtful headspace you're in. At this point, you can solve one more elevator puzzle and return to Myst through a dedicated linking book. However, you'll probably want to grab the pages before heading back. By which, I mean one page at a time. You can only hold one page at a time. This part of the game crosses into engine limitations for me, and I'm not a fan. The one hard goal you're given is to collect these pages, and while, yes, you only have to get one, obviously, you want both to learn more about the story. This means you have to backtrack at least once through every age. Thankfully, the revisits go by pretty quickly, with some exception. A few puzzles in this game are not to my liking, not because I hate them conceptually, but because they're tedious or just subversive in a bad way. Like, okay, to actually get to Channelwood, you need to solve this puzzle with a cabin and a tree outside. The cabin has a safe and what looks like a furnace with a picture of the tree, suggesting they're connected. The hint in the observation tower gives you a 3-digit combination, which you enter into the safe, and voila, a matchbox. Take out a match, go to the furnace, and I'm clicking on it. I'm clicking all over. There's only so much space to click. Is it on the knob here? No? What am I missing? Oh, of course. After picking up the match, you need to mouse over the match book to light it. Then you can spark the pilot light. This is the only time you ever do anything like this in the whole game. At no other point do you pick up anything other than a page, and interacting via mousing over is never used again. There is a stark difference between the boundaries of the world being expanded and a random one-off mode of interaction. If my tools aren't consistent, the solutions feel random and unmotivated. Some of this can be chalked up to Myst running on HyperCard, which was an Apple program you can think of as allowing for really advanced slideshows. There's no inventory or context menus or any of that. It's barely a video game engine. Once the fire is lit, you can crank the gas to raise and lower the tree outside very slowly. So slowly, I don't even know if I did it right half the time. Oh, it moved. This is one instance of tedium that I'm not a fan of, the other being in the Selenitic age. Actually, I like most of the puzzles connected to this world, figuring out the voltage to the spaceship for one, and the musical puzzle inside. Some people might struggle with this if you're really bad at remembering tones, but I thought it was fun. Once on the island, the musical theme continues, with sound monitors set up around various landmarks. This door at the beginning is locked with a device that plays different sounds in order, much like the puzzle we just did, so I figured that sounds would be important, and took note of the different ones at each location. Eventually, aligning this radio tower gave me the correct order, and I advanced into the worst part of the game. The underground maze is one of the most tedious, needlessly time-wasting mazes I've ever seen in a game. There isn't even a gimmick. Every point in the maze has 8 doors, and every room, every facing, is identical. I tried to diligently map out the whole complex for over half an hour before I gave up and looked up a map. You know, when it's all laid out like this, it looks pretty simple, but trust me, the monotony and sameness makes it overwhelming. A trial and error gauntlet that isn't very puzzling to begin with. The game is full of detail, which you might find to its detriment. Take the Mechanical Age, a floating fortress over the water. Inside are 2 rooms, each belonging to a different brother, and with lots going on. Cirrus's room is overflowing with devices, gems, paintings, several of which are interactive, suggesting they're part of a puzzle. But no, I'm not sure if they're supposed to be red herrings, but I can definitely picture someone getting hung up on this, not realizing the true puzzle lies in the tower's elevator, rotating the outer bridge. Naturally, it's not that simple. In Akinar's room, littered with weapons of war, lies a device to simulate the rotation of the tower. With some experimentation, you figure out how to work the levers to get the bridge to spin. This has no effect on the actual world, but it could be important, so you head to the elevator. The second floor is nothing. Just a wall. If you look up, you can just make out 2 similar levers on top of the elevator, though. How do I get there? How do I send the elevator down while I'm standing outside? There's 3 buttons, up, down, and something in the center. I click the middle button, but I don't move until after a delay. Oh! Press the center button, step out, wait for the elevator to drop, then you get access to the controls on top. But wait! There's no visual reference for what you're doing. I'm assuming this is the real version of the device in Akinar's room. How can I tell when it's working? Hang on. I recognize these sound effects. Oh, the sounds correspond to where the bridge stops, so I'll write down which is which, then head back up the tower, rotate it, and voila! I have successfully found part of the code to get out of here. In a 2020 article titled, "Is Myst Still One of the Worst Games Ever?" John Walker of Rock Paper Shotgun absolutely eviscerates this thing. He writes, quote, "There's no direction, no sense to the path, no narrative flow. It's just a great big unlabeled remote control, and you're supposed to feel good about yourself when you work out which button changes the channel." And I do. I love figuring out which button changes the channel. I feel so cool. The worst moments of Myst are the ones of total tedium, or where the pre-rendered backgrounds are too muddy to see the secret panel you need to press. That stuff's lame. But the best parts of Myst are the ones where you walk up to something you have no context for, press a button, and see a change in the world. Your sense of agency increasing as you explore. Some people deride this style of design, and even the Miller brothers made a concerted effort to make the puzzles feel less arbitrary in the sequel, Riven. I understand and can enjoy that, but I also like the feeling I get from Myst, that I'm touching something alien to me, but familiar to someone else. At its most powerful, it can be transcendentally empathetic. This is a setting where books take you to other dimensions, where a rocket ship in one age can exist in another. Atris describes watching the inhabitants of Channelwood for hours without understanding their routines or their purposes. Why should I find anything here recognizable? These are devices beyond my understanding, but by getting my hands on them, I can discover what they are. Little by little, this unknowable world is revealed to me through play and experimentation. Stoneship is an age that sticks out to me for many reasons. Atris writes about 3 boys he met here, whom he interacts a lot with. They build a lighthouse together. He creates things for them, like the ship that he accidentally materializes in the great rock they live on. He teaches them that the rain is nothing to be afraid of. He grows attached to this age, charts their constellations, and after he leaves, he builds a machine on Myst, his home, to watch the stars, like he did with them years ago. I can't help but see his relationship with these 3 boys, Emmett, Branch, and Will, as being fatherly. This makes Cirrus and Akinar, his real sons, all the more mysterious. Each one claims the other murdered their father and imprisoned them there unjustly, and each page you collect for them makes their message come through clearer. At first, I was suspicious of Akinar. He seems, unwell when he speaks to you.
It's so long since my brother, Cirrus, wrongfully imprisoned me within this book. Stupid schemes.
His quarters in the Mechanical Age have a secret room with bottled poisons and an electrified cage, instruments of torture. In Cirrus's own secret room, he keeps a letter from Akinar, excoriating him for his greediness. If his brother is disturbed in the head, Cirrus is cartoonishly mustache twirling.
Do not retreat, courageous. He will destroy both myself and you, just as he destroyed the other creatures of Myst.
The acting isn't great. The brothers are both depicted by Rand and Robin themselves, who aren't Shakespearean, to say the least.
I hope I pushed the right button, my dear. What a very interesting device you have here. I'm not erasing anything important, am I?
In a funny way, the over-the-top hamminess of their performances left me guessing whether or not there was a twist here. Like, no, there's no way it's that obvious. Well, it is that obvious. After giving them the 4th page, they tell you how to find the code to the fireplace's secret elevator. Oh, why is that the noise? On the other side, you find a red, blue, and green book. They warn you that the green one will immediately imprison you like they are, and that their own father warned them about it. If you heed their advice and give them the final pages, whichever brother you free immediately locks you in their book, abandoning you to contemplate how dumb you are for believing them. This is kind of an ending. Opening the green book reveals, for the first time, Atris. He wasn't murdered, as his sons claim, but imprisoned in an age called Dunny, and to free him, you'll need to find a secret page. He doesn't tell you where it is, but if you've been keeping notes, you can put it together. Across different ages, you'll find the torn halves of a single piece of paper outlining how to open a vault. I was really satisfied writing both halves down in my notes to make the full message. Flip some switches on Myst and pop! Back to the fireplace. Ah! How does a square make that sound? Give him the page, he leaves, wait a bit. He comes back, says congratulations, and tells you that you can explore the ages as you like. That's it? That's the end of the game? It might not surprise you to hear that some parts of the story were rushed, and Cyan was already running up against the limits of technology at the time. Seriously, getting this to run in 1993 as well as it did, with as little lag as possible, was a tremendous feat. Getting smooth video and sound at all must have been a pain in the neck.
The biggest problem during the whole development was the CD-ROM speed.
In nice terms, because I like the game, Myst has a subdued story. It's not terribly exciting, and the ending is hot air, but the more I think on it, the more I like it. The ambience is what does it for me. I'm okay with not having the tightest plot in the world, because what I get out of the scraps that are there paint a whole picture for me. Atris has the power to create and shape worlds through writing about them, but the last page isn't the end, it's just the beginning. That's the page that leads him into the world itself. When he gets there, he isn't a god. He isn't omniscient and omnipotent. He's an explorer. He finds himself surprised and intrigued by what he finds. He encounters people whose origins he can't begin to fathom. He looks over horizons and can't tell you what's out there. At every turn, though, he loves learning, playing, building. He respects the people he meets like he's one of them and not their superior. There's an obvious metaphor here for creativity. Myst resounds so strongly with me because it's just like the book my character found and fell through. Works of art aren't mindless time wasters to be chewed up and disposed of. They invite us into themselves to find new and wonderful things. This is where Cirrus and Akinar lose their ways. Unlike their father, they see themselves as different from the art they inhabit. Cirrus had no respect for the world, and so he conquered and plundered it, taxed the people for their riches. Akinar had no respect for their personhood, so he became a masochistic torturer and murderer. Both brothers saw the ages their father created as places to abuse and exploit. It's fitting, then, that you beat them by doing what they couldn't. You appreciate the world. You take note of what's in it. You engage with the remnants of culture and science to understand them. You and a friend sit side by side to share the happiness of figuring out a puzzle.
And just, yeah. Hold it. Oh!
Myst, at its heart, is a game about the joy of creation. One of the things I always try to do when I watch, play, read, listen to anything is to meet it on its own terms. The same way I wouldn't want to see someone only in terms of what they can do for me, I don't want to see art as my slave that gives me what I want at my leisure. It's okay to relax some of your expectations, to approach a work and find out what it wants to do. Maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't, but every piece of art is a little shred of a person cut off and packaged to you. Especially in the realm of games, let it breathe. Have a conversation with it. When I was a child, I found a strange book called Myst and fell through it for one evening before dinner. As an adult, I've come back to see what's changed. But the island isn't different so much as my eyes are. Despite seeing everything it has to offer, I don't feel like I've really finished it. Maybe because the ending has not yet been written. Thank you to my patrons who keep this channel free. $10 a month patrons get exclusive access to commentary tracks for these videos. Thank you. Bye.
Here comes a daredevil.